on this Monday night, the U.S. president's 20-point proposal to end the war in Gaza.
We can bring an end to the death and destruction.
What Israel's prime minister has agreed to, plus the pressure on Israel's far right and on Hamas to accept.
This can be done the easy way, or it can be done the hard way.
Lifelines, the government loans to a Canadian steelmaker struggling under the weight of hefty U.S. tariffs. Lights, camera, and potential action. The confusion and anxiety over Trump's threat to tax films not made in America. And stepping up to the plate.
I can't even put it into words how exciting it was.
The Toronto Blue Jays riding high on striking out a 10-year drought.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Nitu Garcha.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. U.S. President Donald Trump met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House today as the escalating crisis in Gaza draws growing global attention. The two leaders unveiled a proposed peace plan they claim will bring a permanent resolution to the fighting between Israel and Hamas. The peace proposal includes another swap of Israeli hostages for the return of more Palestinian prisoners and a multi-stage withdrawal of Israeli forces. It would also involve an interim government under an international body led by Trump, as well as Gaza's demilitarization. But the entire plan hinges on whether Hamas agrees to the terms. Trump says if not, he's willing to keep backing Israel's intensifying action. Jackson Proskow has our top story.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu arrived at the White House, facing immense pressure to accept a ceasefire agreement with Hamas.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Hours later, he emerged with President Donald Trump touting a U.S.-led vision for ending the war.
If we work together, we can bring an end to the death and destruction that we've seen for so many years.
Trump's 20-point plan includes gradual Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, the release of remaining Israeli hostages within 72 hours in exchange for aid, and a post-war plan for governance of Gaza by an international stabilization force personally overseen by Trump.
Something that will achieve all our war objectives without any further bloodshed.
If Hamas doesn't agree, Trump said he would green-light further Israeli military operations.
Israel would have my full backing to finish the job of destroying the threat of Hamas.
This can be done the easy way, or it can be done the hard way. But it will be done.
Netanyahu and Trump also phoned the Prime Minister of Qatar. The Israeli leader apologized for the September airstrike on Doha targeting Hamas leadership, marking a stark change in tone for Netanyahu.
Please, order in the hall.
Last week, delegates from 50 nations walked out of his address to the UN in protest as Netanyahu vowed to keep fighting on.
That is why Israel must finish the job.
In Gaza, Israel dropped more leaflets, ordering residents to evacuate Gaza City ahead of a further ground operation. We are tired, truly. We are really tired of this life, says this displaced Palestinian woman. It's now a question of whether the proposed terms are acceptable to Hamas and whether Netanyahu can sell the deal domestically, with some on Israel's far right already rejecting the suggestion of a withdrawal from Gaza. Nithu.
Hey, Jackson Proskow in Washington. Thanks, Jackson. Algoma Steel is set to receive $500 million in combined loans from the federal government and Ontario. The company is a significant part of the Canadian economy, employing some 2,800 people at its plant in Sault Ste. Marie. The funding will help the manufacturing giant maintain its workforce and, as Mackenzie Gray reports, reduce reliance on the U.S. in the face of Trump's tariff war.
For the Liberals, it's more than just a loan.
Without the foundation of this Canadian-owned steel company, we would lose our sovereign ability to produce steel.
Keeping Sault Ste. Marie's Algoma Steel going, the central reason behind the federal government's $400 million injection.
We have a historical market where 60% of our steel used to go into the U.S. With a 50% tariff, that market is effectively closed to us.
That closure had led to the reevaluation of the kind of steel products Algoma makes to better serve the Canadian market.
The entire loan is predicated on the desire of Algoma Steel to pivot both to new markets and new products.
The province of Ontario also forking out $100 million bringing the total help for the ailing steel company to $500 million.
Ontario tax dollars are supporting Ontario workers. That includes steel workers here in Hamilton.
But unlike Algoma, Hamilton's two major steel producers aren't Canadian companies. Proskow, owned by a Luxembourg steel conglomerate, and Stelco, owned by Ohio-based Cleveland Cliffs, whose CEO is a vocal supporter of the Trump steel tariffs, including on CNBC.
If you believe that a supply chain bringing parts of cars across the border with Mexico or Canada 7 times, and this is efficient, this is not. This is insanity. You got to build in America.
That could make it harder for steel town companies to get similar help from Mark Carney,
How are you?
who campaigned at the Algoma facility in the final week of the election.
We have counter tariffs on steel and aluminum against $30 billion and reinvest them in the workers and the companies that are most affected.
Since Carney's visit, the Liberals have changed their elbows-up approach, dropping most counter tariffs on the U.S., which is how they promised they'd pay for the $10 billion loan program for tariff-ravaged companies, Neetu, making Carney's upcoming November budget even more challenging.
All right, Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa. Thanks, Mackenzie. U.S. President Trump is renewing threats to impose tariffs on films produced outside of the U.S. On Truth Social, Trump posted he plans to slap 100% levies to bolster American productions. But as Mike Armstrong reports, there is confusion over how tariffs would be enforced in such a complex global industry, if there's even any legal grounds to impose them at all.
Never one to mince words, Donald Trump is accusing other countries of stealing the U.S.'s film industry.
The movie makers.
Trump first floated his frustration with the industry back in May, saying it was dying a very fast death. Now he says he has a plan to solve the problem, a 100% tariff on movies made in other countries.
Well, there's no question that when you get the President of the United States sort of speculating or talking in this way, that creates uncertainty in the marketplace.
Now, Donald Trump can't claim any sort of a trade deficit. The U.S. is an international cultural behemoth, but domestic productions are down. Attracting productions has become highly competitive around the world. Trump appears to be trying to disincentivize productions from going outside the U.S. with tariffs, the same tool he's using for things like aluminum, pharmaceuticals, and just last week, upholstered furniture.
I mean, the problem with the United States is it's under Trump. It's working like a mafia operation, right? There's no consistency. There's no reciprocity.
Well, I disagree with anything that guy says. He drives me crazy.
Well, Ontario's premier appears somewhat frustrated with the proposal. It's also left many in the industry scratching their heads. How any sort of tariff would work, especially in the age of streaming, is very much up in the air. But even Trump just musing about hitting foreign productions may mean companies consider cutting back.
It's the threat that counts, right? It's the threat that has the effect, even if you don't have the action.
Now, a movie tariff could risk the U.S. upending the global moratorium on tariffs of electronic transmissions, the reason things like TikTok or YouTube work across borders without taxes. The fact there's no real plan proposed may be because it would open such a complicated can of worms. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
Police in Michigan say everyone is accounted for following Sunday morning's church attack that left 4 dead and 8 others wounded. Hundreds were inside the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints when a gunman rammed a truck into the building and began shooting at people before setting the church on fire. The suspect, an ex-Marine, was killed during a shootout with police. The FBI is investigating the shooting as an act of targeted violence. The federal government has listed the India-based Bishnoi gang as a terrorist entity. The designation gives Ottawa the power to seize property and freeze accounts. It also bars Canadians from financing or aiding the group. Last year, the RCMP accused India of using the Bishnoi gang to carry out murders and acts of extortion targeting Canadians. New Delhi has rejected those claims. In Moldova, a pro-European Union party has won a pivotal parliamentary election despite an alleged multi-million-dollar interference campaign by Russia. The republic of 2.4 million people wedged between Ukraine and Romania used to be part of the former Soviet Union. Since declaring independence in 1991, it has had a fractious relationship with Russia. Vincent McAviney explains.
On Sunday, just over half the electorate in Moldova went to the polls, giving their backing to the pro-European Union PAS party of President Maia Sandu, seen here casting her own ballot. Patriotic Electoral Bloc, which pushed for closer ties with Moscow, received less than a quarter of votes, sending a clear message to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Russia is our past, not our future.
Russia has not achieved its objectives. It has spent a lot of money in these elections, but the results show that they failed.
The government here, backed by the West, including Canada, says the Kremlin was paying people to vote, to protest and to spread misinformation online. Raids took place last week with 74 people arrested, accused of being trained by Russia to stage riots before and after the election. For Moldovans too young to remember being under the Soviet Union, Russia's invasion of neighboring Ukraine has galvanized support for moving west.
A lot of young people started to go vote, me included. I voted for the first time.
Russia is not doing a lot of good things.
Moldova is in the process of formally joining the EU, with high-profile visits during the election from leaders like France's President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. Analysts say this result is evidence Russia's program of election interference in the West is weakening.
I think it's a desperate move from Russia because they're seeing that their influence in Moldova is slipping away. Moldovans have decided, they've decided their own future.
There were some protests from the pro-Russian side, but as is now happening across Eastern Europe, Putin's full-scale invasion of Ukraine is driving people away from the repressive sphere of Russian influence and towards the promise of free societies and liberal democracy in the West. Vincent McAviney, Global News, London.
It's dubbed the child welfare to prison pipeline. Coming up, the warnings about the dangerous path for Indigenous children in government care. The Saskatchewan government has apologized to former students of a residential school and agreed to pay survivors and their families more than $40 million.
Simply put, these schools were a mistake, and they shouldn't have existed. And today, on behalf of the province of Saskatchewan, I apologize to you.
The Ile La Crosse boarding school operated for more than 150 years until the 1970s. But because it predated the federal residential school system, it was not included in the 2006 Indian Residential Schools Settlement Agreement. The residential school system may be part of a dark chapter in Canadian history, but Indigenous leaders and allies warn many destructive policies still live on today. Melissa Ridgen reports on what's known as the child welfare to prison pipeline and how youth involved in government care face an increased risk of life in the criminal justice system.
Roland Chartrand could be a poster boy.
Do you kind of feel like you're that statistic a bit?
Yeah. I came in when I was 3 years old.
Came in and never came out.
How many foster homes did you ever keep track of how many you went through?
50 plus homes all over. Like they got all over Manitoba. I was troubled kid, so I ended up getting ruined in the foster homes wherever I went.
From the child welfare system to youth jail to adult jail.
What's the longest you've ever been out of jail?
Probably. You know what? I couldn't just say off the top of my head.
Court records show the 41-year-old hasn't ever made it even a year out of jail. Chartrand has 7 full pages of convictions on his record, from petty theft crimes to serving 8 years for manslaughter. He's here waiting trial on weapons charges.
After these charges are done and you've served your time for those, do you see a different path? Do you see a way out for yourself?
I really don't know.
This pipeline is well documented around the world. In the UK, 52% of those who had been in foster care have a criminal conviction by age 24. In the US, 90% of youth who have had 5 or more foster placements will enter the criminal justice system. And in Manitoba, research found that First Nations youth had 24 times the odds of being involved in both systems compared to non-Indigenous youth. Kim Diamond spent decades working in child welfare and corrections.
As an officer, when I was in there, I saw how there was nothing waiting for anyone out here, and that always really bothered me. Children are worth money in care. Prisoners are worth money in custody. There's whole industries.
At a time when many Canadians are demanding a tough-on-crime approach to people like Chartrand, advocates like Diamond see it as perpetuating the problem.
This exploiting of people in the name of justice and corrections and rehabilitation, that's not helping our country.
Advocates like her, though, well aware that a softer approach to dealing with this institutional pipeline is a hard sell to the public. Melissa Ridgen, Global News, Winnipeg.
Ahead, why a Halifax-based flight simulation firm is getting a big financial boost from Boeing. A major video game company with ties to Canada is being sold to a group of American and Saudi Arabian investors. Electronic Arts is being acquired for more than $76 billion Canadian. It's the largest private equity-funded buyout ever. Among the investors is a firm managed by Jared Kushner, President Trump's son-in-law. EA, which is known for games like Madden NFL, has studios across Canada, including Vancouver, Edmonton, and Montreal. Money to replace Canada's maritime patrol planes is flowing to smaller defense firms at a critical time. The federal government has promised NATO it will spend billions on the military to reach 5% of GDP while simultaneously revamping the country's procurement process to support Canadian businesses. Heidi Petracek explains what one Nova Scotia firm would like to see done to help domestic defense companies grow and compete.
Pilot, we need 10 meters to the right.
This mixed reality virtual simulation tests the skills of aircraft personnel without them ever leaving the ground. A cheaper and safer way to train developed in Nova Scotia.
We value the deep experience that's here in the community.
On Monday, the company behind the technology, Blue Drop, got a boost from aerospace giant Boeing. $1.4 million to expand the simulator's capabilities. A funding obligation stemming from the $10 billion sole source contract the federal government awarded to Boeing to replace Canada's aging military surveillance planes. Boeing's delivery of the first of 16 new aircraft, set originally for 2026, now
arriving in the next 2 years, I would say, for precision.
This investment is among half a dozen made by Boeing since the deal was signed in 2023. As Canada ramps up military spending, Blue Drop's Vice President of Technology wants to see changes to the federal procurement process next. A cumbersome process, he says, that often excludes small firms and takes too long.
Having contracts that are there for us, accessible for us, but it just takes time, you're impeding the capability of the company to grow faster, to bring more innovation, and to do what we're doing now.
We will have more defense announcements.
Centralized procurement is part of the Prime Minister's plan. So is spending more defense dollars at home rather than south of the border. One analyst hopes Prime Minister Mark Carney's government finds ways to spread the extra spending around to help companies scale up.
There's different ways that those policy instruments can be adjusted. I think the thing is that the government needs to give a good think and then be clear about what kind of behavior it wants to incentivize and try and align the different mechanisms to achieve that.
Look at us, we're here.
That's Blue Drop's message to Ottawa on behalf of the roughly 500 firms like it, which make up 85% of companies in Canada's defense industry. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
Fandemonium. Next, the Blue Jays seal the deal to bag Toronto's place in the playoffs. There was a lot to celebrate for the Toronto Blue Jays and their fans last night. The team beat the Tampa Bay Rays, clinching the American League East Division title, their first in 10 years. The win brings Canada's only Major League Baseball team one step closer to bringing the World Series back to Toronto for the first time since 1993. Eric Sorensen looks at how the team got here and where it's headed.
Imagine a last-game grand slam for Alejandro Kirk. It's been that kind of magical season for the Blue Jays. Sunday's celebration culminating weeks of nerve-wracking tension.
I can't even put it into words how exciting it was. It was almost like a superhero movie.
You will be shaking, but at the end of the day, we are so happy.
It's a year that really no one saw coming. Here's what the American League standings looked like in May after 2 months. The Blue Jays were in 10th place with no expectations. Then they started winning and climbing all the way to first by July. 2 months later, even with ups and downs, the Jays ended the regular season in first place. And with 94 wins, the best record they've had since 1993, when they won their second World Series. There is something special about this 2025 team, propelled by stars like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette and George Springer, but also unknowns like Nathan Lucas, who spent much of the last 10 seasons in the minor leagues riding buses. Lucas, along with Addison Barger, Eric Lauer, Miles Straw, not household names, but from top to bottom, a genuinely close-knit team.
You go back 6-7 months, there were massive question marks around players like a Miles Straw or even an Ernie Clement to a degree. David Schneider was in the minor leagues. Addison Barger was in the minor leagues. Now we're seeing these guys deliver on a really big stage. And yeah, it's contributing to them as a first place team. And it's one of the reasons that they are where they are.
Where the players are and where the city of Toronto, its mayor, and all Blue Jays fans are is waiting now for the best kind of baseball, October baseball. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
And as we pick up where Eric left off, that is Global National for this Monday. I'm Neetu Garcha. Tonight here, Canada, is Toronto City Hall, where Blue Jays mascot Ace helped Mayor Olivia Chow raise a team flag to celebrate their division title. The flag has the Jays slogan for the playoffs, "Want it all," signaling high hopes for the World Series. Thanks so much for watching and hope you'll join us again tomorrow. Have a great night.